Okay, hello everyone. Today we have the honor to interview Grandmaster Professor Al Dacascos for our interview, and it's our 50th anniversary of KAJUKENBO in Germany, and therefore we would like to ask Sifu Al a couple of questions. Sifu, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. We had a great time today and enjoying every moment of it.
Wonderful, wonderful. I would like to get started right away with a little bit of an historical introduction and about your journey into the martial arts.
Okay.
So one of the questions that we had is how and when did your journey into the world of martial arts begin?
At a very early age, uh, probably the day I was born. You see, the thing is that people always ask me, when the journey of my martial arts began. I would say my journey to the martial arts began like everybody else. The minute we come into this world and we're born, our fist is closed and we're yelling and we're screaming. That's martial arts. That's fight. The only time that our hands are open is when we let go of life. But this here has been fighting from the very beginning of birth. Now, when you talk about the physical arts of the martial arts like judo, jiu-jitsu, karate, whatever, that probably started maybe at my 3 years old or 4 years old when I would watch my grandfather practice eskrima, the Filipino fighting arts. Never knew what I was doing because they were practicing the sticks and the knives before they go into the cane field. Because he was an immigrant from Philippines that migrated to the Hawaiian Islands and was used as migrant workers. Eventually, I got into judo, jiu-jitsu, but that was not until maybe about 10 or 12 years old from that point on. And from that point, I never stopped.
Fantastic. And who were your first instructors and how did they influence your development?
I would say that, a lot of people ask me the questions. There's been so many people influencing me in my martial arts. The Filipino fighting arts naturally would be my grandfather.
Right.
His name was Anastasio Salva.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was the one that was practicing the eskrima sticks and the eskrima knives at that particular time. And then as I grew older and went into judo, jiu-jitsu, then it was rubber man. They call him rubber man Yigami.
Yeah.
He was a jiu-jitsu man, and I had Michael Chong also. But this was like in my later years, not 3 years old, but I'm talking about maybe 9, 10, 11 years old. My whole life was practicing martial arts, and sometimes we would practice martial arts, kicking and punches and throwing things, in the like our baseball park or in the park. But we never knew it was called martial arts. We did it like the same, like everybody else in Germany. They practice soccer from an early age, so it was just part of the culture. It wasn't pronounced as martial arts until later on. They said, "Oh, you're practicing martial arts? What is martial arts? Oh, kicking, punching. Oh,
yeah."
But it was so natural so normal that we never even talked about it.
So it was basically a birth and you grew up with it, but was there a moment in your life where you felt like, okay, I want to do this as a profession?
No.
Because it seems like it was play most of your growing up, or it was part of your culture, part of your...
It was part of the culture, and it's just part fun. You just did it. So and it became more profound when I was in high school. Other than that, it was just more like play. And when you got in high school, then you get into more fights then, and you became, now it's coming, it's natural. So the martial arts came very natural to me because it was you're doing every day. It was just like a habit.
Right.
You never think about it. You always do it. Somebody call your name, you answer.
Yeah.
Somebody touch you, boom, you react.
Right.
It wasn't like you brought out a book and
Yeah.
turned the pages, and this was so natural.
Yeah.
And that's the way martial arts supposed to be anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So unless we put it in a corset and
Yeah,
put rules and everything around
yeah,
it, I
yeah.
guess. Right. So what was my next question? When we go into One-Hop Kendo and the origins and the development of One-Hop Kendo, so transitioning over to from this natural everyday culture into the One-Hop Kendo expression. How exactly did you come up with the idea to found One-Hop Kendo? Like how?
Well, One-Hop Kendo, is a style that originated and came out of the KAJUKENBO style, or KAJUKENBO method, I would say. Because you call it KAJUKENBO Self-Defense Institute or KAJUKENBO Self-Defense, and the KAJUKENBO Self-Defense was based more on the Kempo karate.
Mm-hmm.
Although they had the elements of judo, jiu-jitsu, and Chinese boxing and so forth. That's where I originally started, but I started off with, so complicated because I've had so many different instructors and people that I associated with practicing martial arts that it wasn't like, oh, you're my teacher or this is my teacher until later on. It was just like we would get together and practice because my neighbors were all into martial arts and we would just go in the backyard and throw each other around, kick and punch and it was informal. It was just very natural. It wasn't until you came into a structured school, then you had these rules and regulations and it became so structured that it was like in a way taking you backwards. Because now you had to learn things. When One-Hop Kendo came along, One-Hop Kendo is still progressing. It don't stop. It is. We can talk a lot about it, but before the KAJUKENBO, before One-Hop Kendo came, naturally I was introduced in judo, jiu-jitsu, and screamer, and then he went into Kempo karate, and then from the Kempo karate, then he went into the KAJUKENBO, and then from KAJUKENBO, he went into Kung Fu. It was like going to a buffet. You put all this food on the table and you're so hungry, you just take it and put it on the plate, and then you find out that you cannot eat it all, and you only have the favorites. So certain things I like because of my stature. In other words, I wasn't a tall guy or heavyweight. I had to move with speed and with snap, so it became personalized.
Right.
You see, so everything that it was because of tailored. So yeah.
So it seems like everything becomes natural, but when you explain to somebody One-Hop Kendo, like how does One-Hop Kendo, and One-Hop Kendo incorporates a lot of techniques and everything from other styles, but how would you explain to somebody, or what's in your opinion, what sets One-Hop Kendo apart from other Kung Fu styles or modern martial arts today? In your opinion?
That's very difficult because I want the student that study under me to learn as much martial arts as possible. Not only the physical part, but everything. You've heard of the phrase more is less and less is more. That means you accept and take a lot inside, but to have more. But when you say more is less, then that means, what is your interpretation of this? You're taking a lot of things inside, but you don't have less perfection in it. You see, but if you have less, then you have more perfection. The opposite way. You understand what I'm talking about, right? So I would say that learn as much as you can, just like going to a buffet, but only eat what you can and throw away the rest.
Okay, that's a good.
And because everybody is individual. I like barbecue, and you might like Japanese food, but you don't know this until you try it. You see, and what tastes good to me might be ugly for you. So that means this is the reason why you notice that we teach 51 different ways of kicking.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're not going to master all of that.
Mm-mm.
You know, you're going to find something that is really you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be your style.
Mm-hmm.
Because the objective of One Hop Kendo is to self-express. We give you all the tools.
Mm-hmm.
It don't mean you're going to use all the tools.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's sometimes when people talk to me, they get confused. You know, I says, okay, let's say that we're going to build a door.
Mm-hmm.
And to build the door, the only thing you have is the door, and you have leather.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're going to cut the leather to use it as a hinge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're not using metal anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so I'm giving you something there.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it is, it's just that we have to be able to find out what is really you, because you're developing a signature of your own.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it when people say, "Oh, Siko, I want to be like you." I say, "No, you cannot be like me. We have to be you. The
Right.
original is always better than a copy."
Yeah.
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 So we're going to make you an original.
Yeah.
You see, so this is why at the very beginning you start off with the Dacascos method, but after you get high enough, then you will understand the process of learning. The objective is to get you away from being a mechanic. Now we have a way of learning. The way of learning is, first of all, everything for you, and you've heard this before.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you learn is so primitive to you. You don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is just that, all right, now we're going to teach you the mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so and the mechanics is like the punch and the kick, and it's very basic.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into the technical part and why and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to stay there, because you go from primitive, mechanical, technical. Is how and when.
Mm-hmm.
The objective of being you, when you become you, is when you become creative and you become fluid. And that's what you want. And I don't like it when people are always in the mechanics or in the technical part. Get away from that. You already done that. Just like when you go to school and the teacher teach you how to block. This is A and this is B. Well, okay, you do it A, B, C, D, E. And they says, okay, now we script it. We just make it. What is script of Deutsch?
Schreiben oder
yeah, you just flow, and later on you say, okay, write your name. You write your name. But when I tell you write my name, C4L, then you're going to write yours. Yours is going to be totally different from the other person. Therefore, you're developing a personality. And that is exactly what you want, is you want to have that individual personality. Right. So when I watch the people today and do this seminar, I see the basics and everything. Some of the students, I go in and I correct them. I say, now you can make it better. Some of them, I leave it there because they haven't mastered the mechanics yet. Okay. That it's not perfect. Once they get perfect, then we get more into detail, because you can always make things better, and we call it maximizing. You maximize the techniques, yeah. Right. And when they begin to maximize the techniques, it's like Birgit, what's your name? Birgit. You never pull out your wallet, you just answer. Yeah. So it becomes like a reflex, and everything else this way, yeah. And it's like I tell people that One Hop Kendo, when you learn everything, is like jazz. There's you don't know when they're gonna end, who's gonna come inside. You can have three people playing a simple song, and then another guy comes inside. He comes inside with a banjo. The other one comes there with a saxophone, and all of a sudden you have five people over there. You have the original music, but it doesn't sound classical anymore. It goes all over the place, and that is what fighting is all about. It goes all over the place because you don't know what the person is going to do. He has a rhythm, bam, bam. And you don't know where the thing's coming up. You go high, low, and everything, and that is what you got to be prepared for. And that's a total One Hop Kendo student is prepared for everything. Yeah, so you have to be able to know this. And the first thing that we go through is just that the things that after you learn from the stage of learning, from the primitive to mechanical, technical, creativity and fluidity. The next phase is just that you must be aware, you must be first, you must be fast, you must hit hard, and you don't stop. And that becomes the philosophy of One Hapyono, not only on the physical part, but also in the business part, on the spiritual part, on anything. So, like if you want to be successful in business and you get into stocks and bonds, you got to be aware, and then you got to be first. You got to be fast. You got to hit hard, and you don't stop. So, what does it shows? Continuation. It shows and gives you the momentum that once you stop, then it stops. But once you start, you don't stop. You keep on going until you achieve accomplishment. You're never going to become a perfectionist if you say, "Oh, I'll do it later." The word "do it later" means you're not going to do it at all. You see, but you say, I will. You prompt yourself to do it, then you keep on going.
Interesting. So would you say then, with the basics and the mechanics and so forth, if we bring this back to, and I know some sort of a structure because it's good for beginners, would you say it's safe to say that the mechanics and everything is, we teach you all like these tools that we have until black belt, and then you are supposed to find yourself and express. You're already on the way, but that's really when this phase should come of self-expression.
Yeah, well, let me just say this. You can take a look at Taekwondo, you can take a look at Karate, or whatever, some of the hitting arts. They're all the same. They all got the basic blocks, the basic punch and everything. But what happens, they come locked into it. They don't get into the creative part where they can make it flow.
Yeah.
So this is why you can see the distinction when you watch Karate or Taekwondo. It's too static. And when you practice Kung Fu, you go bam, move. There's no continuation. You cannot see where the line stops and begins. It just goes all over like this. And that is what life is about. Because the blood inside of you is constantly flowing. So why are you stopping and looking like a robot? No, you got to be able to flow and be really natural.
Right.
Gee, I can imagine if a person is trying to talk to a woman and he stop. I would look at the person and say, "Are you totally crazy? There's no continuity."
That's true. When you were here in Germany and first you came over here and you introduced KAJUKENBO, what were the beginnings, or what were your plans at the time?
The plans?
Yeah.
When I first came here, I came here on a demonstration team. We demonstrated in Berlin, and we were the United States Marshal Representative team that came. We did. We had a lot of champions. We had some of the people like Bill Wallace, Chuck Norris, Joe Louis, a lot of the top fighters at that time. And it only came as a demonstration to Berlin, until a guy by the name of George Bruckner saw the demonstration that we did, and saw the possibility of Kung Fu, because I was the one that introduced Kung Fu in Berlin. So what he did was just that when I flew back to America, he flew back to America and tried to find where I was.
No. Okay.
And then he contacted me and he says, I want to bring Kung Fu to Germany. And I already was successful. I had my schools. I didn't want to go anything else this way,
Right. So you were just talking about Georg Bruckner?
George Bruckner from Berlin.
Yeah.
He saw us in the demonstration, and he was with George Bruckner. And then there was a guy by the name of Herbert Kranz.
Yeah.
Herbert Kranz was from Hamburg. And he got in touch with George Bruckner, and they became friends. So he says, I want Al Dacascos to come to Hamburg. So he flew to where was I? In Colorado at that time. And he proposed. He says, I need you to come so we can introduce Kung Fu into Budo Club Nippon in Hamburg, Germany. And for me, I was interested. But after a while, I start thinking, that seems like a good opportunity. So I came and uh, went back to Berlin, taught there for a little bit, and then came into Hamburg, and taught in Hamburg. And by that time, they was doing the Bruce Lee story, the Bruce Lee movie.
Ah, okay.
And Linda Lee, which is Bruce Lee's wife, wanted me to play the part of Bruce Lee. So she had asked me, while I was in Hamburg, Germany, to come back and to go to the audition.
Yeah.
To fly to Hollywood and do the audition, on which I went, and then I got the part, to play for it.
Yeah.
But there was so much politics that was going inside, that they wanted to change my name to some Chinese name and call me the new Bruce Lee, and I said no.
Yeah.
That I don't want to do
Yeah.
it, so
Yeah.
I turned that thing down.
And this is kind of like what you said earlier, like in KAJUKENBO, you need to find yourself. Don't be somebody else,
Right.
but
Yeah.
find yourself. Yeah.
And Linda Lee wanted me to do it because she knew that Bruce Lee had talked about me, and that I could do things, and she saw me demonstrate and all that kind of things, and she says Al Dacascos could play him. But he say, if they would have said Al Dacascos portrayed the life of Bruce Lee, then it's okay. But to change my name and everything, no, there's only one Bruce Lee.
Right.
You see, so I says no, don't do it. So and I came back to Hamburg, I just started in Hamburg. I brought inside other instructors, and I went back and forth until they says, okay, we're going to do it, and stayed in Germany.
Wow, that's a great story. Speaking of which, I think our audience would also like to know about, how the first generation, so that those were some of your first students in Hamburg, how, if you have any sort of memories of that, probably many, many memories.
Good, bad, and ugly.
But we are curious to hear, what were they like, the first generation as students?
Well, there was a lot of them, a lot of groups, but when you're talking about this particular 6 or 7 or 8 of them, they all came from different backgrounds, because some of them already had judo experience, they had karate experience, and then they wanted to learn, and I can remember Christian Wolf, he was young, maybe 15 or 16 years. I don't know how young he was, but he had already been in karate, I think. And I remember we were doing the high kick sway, right? And he was losing his balance all the time. and I was looking at him. I said, "But I don't know about this one. I don't know how he's going to do." But he stayed and stayed. And then you had Dasus, Dawson was a little bit, stocky but clumsy. He did. The one that I was most impressed with was Michael Timmerman. Because he was flexible. He was flexible. And then we had Yarn there, and they all already had experience. I never knew which one I was going to be, but I wanted to say, okay, I need to build up a good fighting team. I need to build up a good demonstration team. And we had a lot of people that came inside for the audition. And I would watch them, and they would demonstrate things. And naturally at the very beginning, everybody's sloppy. They look bad. But I could see the potential. You see what I mean? It says, okay, this one is going to do that and that. No, that isn't good. Come inside, and I had to be selective on that. But they all had different personalities, because Christian never knew Dasus, so it would team them up, and then Mikhail, Timmerman, and Jan, they wasn't really that close, they were working together, and I remember they were working as post office worker, and Winfred came later, but he was a truck driver, and Emmanuel Bettencourt was working for was that
Airline.
the airlines, Lufthansa, and Christian was training at his father's bar, you know. And Dacascos was a mechanic, and boy, I did. Dacascos was the one. I had a red BMW, and somehow they Mikkel, I can't remember, one of them put a dent in the car, you know. and so I was pretty upset, you see. So they said they're going to fix it. So Sifu Yarn and Mikkel tried to fix the car, but you know they're not professionals, you know. So even how they fixed the car, the BMW, you still see it's all the things inside, and I got very angry with them. I said, "Oh, so
never my car again."
no. So they did it professionally and everything else this way, yeah. But this means during the time that we were building up the team, we did a lot of demonstrations all over, and that's when we begin to start building more people wanting to come into the school.
Okay.
It was that, and we had a good fighting team. And the fighting techniques that I brought was they never had this before, you know, because I trained them with the airbags and the full punch and everything, and I only taught them what worked for me. You see, what worked for me, I taught them, so it made it easy for them. They never had to discover on their own. I knew what worked, and then I decided, okay, this group here is going to learn. Traditionally, we're going to do the step cross side kick. It's going to be the foundation. And that one there, you notice, that one was the very beginning was the one that established one KAJUKENBO. We were fighting, bam, inside the side kick all the time, and people go, wow. Even the Taekwondo people, they switched their fighting stance to fight against us.
Okay.
You see, because we were always hitting him. You see, they would fight this, they would switch, and then they would kick. But no, we were already there. So by the time they switch, in the middle of the switch, we already hit them.
Wow.
You see, so everything that we did, you know, was based on technical fighting principles. Yeah, the objective of what we had in the technical fighting principles was to cause the maximum damage on the guy, minimum damage on me. So this is why we would come in, bam, and outside, never stay over there to fight punch for punch. You know, stupid.
Wow, that's interesting. That's a great story. If here's one, would you, when you look back to the times, I mean, it's 50 years, and obviously you returned back to the US, but when you were here, when you look back on the 50 years, is there anything that you now in hindsight would do differently? Or
well, sometimes
that you regret, or you know,
sometimes I feel that I should have been here longer to give a much more refined definition. Because when I left over here, you know, gave them 8 years or 9 years or whatever experience. It was to the stage where you know you could develop. You know, but being that I wasn't here all the time when I came, there wasn't a chance for me to maximize them or refine them. So what happens is, you know, you can see the different distinctions of your Sifu Yan and Sifu Christian and Sifu Emmanuel. They all have their personalities, and I see this, which is really good because they develop their signatures. But had I been here a little bit longer, I could have tell them we can refine it and make it much better. Instead of, you know, because, you know, we have gross motor skill, fine motor skills, and all of that. You know? They had developed it, and then some of it, I see still yet. There's still some bad habits, even if they're grandmasters. And I know I can still feel it. That if a little bit more time could tweak it a little bit more, you know. But it will come. You know, it's all in stages, you know.
Well, I want to switch and go in the personal insights, motivation and change. How did you manage to stay motivated in your training for so many years? Bringing it back to you,
rephrase that again.
How did you manage to stay motivated in your training for so many years? In other words, why haven't you quit yet, you know, or retired or something like this? Like how do you still do, why do you still do what you do?
There were times and moments that I took, you know, took a month off or 2 months off. Like, you know, and like within these last 5 years, we had the pandemic and I had my injury. I took 2.5 years off to heal. Now, I no practice, no nothing, because my doctor told me that with the head injury,
Yes.
if I were to push myself, then I could have another stroke. And I said, no,
I see.
So I slowed down. So I have to be able to pace myself. So right now, I still got a little bit of vertigo. So I pace myself. But the thing that always motivates me is just that I look at the students. I say, I'm not finished with my job yet, because I can still show them, how to be a being, a human being, and use the martial arts as a way, because I always look at the martial arts as only as a stepping stone, or a jumping board in a springboard, bam, to go to different, You just don't sit there and bounce. I don't know. You got to be able to move forward. You see, so the martial arts, I think a lot about how the principles can work, how the philosophy can work, how it can turn a person to be a better person. Because there's only two times you look yourself in the mirror: at the beginning of the day and at the end of the night. In the beginning you say, okay, I look good. Nighttime you say, oh man. But in between, was you a good person? So everything has got to be a reflection of development. And I think a martial artist is always fighting against himself. That's the greatest enemy he has, to be better, and to be more of a peacemaker, more so than a warrior. I mean, warrior is good, but the fighter is one that fights for anything that's not good. A warrior fights for a reason, and you got to fight for a cause.
For an intent, right? What is the most important piece of advice you'd give to a young martial artist today in a world that has changed over the time? Like right now, what?
Yeah, now it's so much chaotic things on it. The thing is getting back into principles, and the values of life. What is valuable. I mean, I see all these things, these wars and killing and everything. I know violence, and man, even if I can go out and I can stop a person, for me it's only a means of self-defense, but not going out to be aggressive. I mean, you already know what violence is all about, and you know how easily death can come,
right?
And how people can be hurt.
Yes.
So the thing is that if you know about pain, then give pleasure. If you know about hate, then give love. Disrespect, give respect. And the thing that is really bad about the world is just that there's lack of communication. There's not enough communication so you can establish a rapport and to develop that trust. And when you develop the trust and transparency, then you have that respect. But respect is never going to come if you don't have trust.
Right.
You got to have that.
Right.
You see, and this is why you practice the martial arts. You know that I'm stopping here is because I'm respecting, and I know you respect me because I'm stopping at this time. You know where the boundaries are. So all it is that the reason why we have wars is that people don't respect the boundaries of the person.
Right.
And in the martial arts, you see, you respect the boundaries of a person. What I can touch with or what I can hurt with, that you know the boundaries, and everything is based on that. Not on the physical level. You got to be also know the emotional, the spiritual, the technical, the ethical values and spiritual boundaries. They all got values.
Right. I think that's very important too, and this is also the dichotomy of having in the martial arts having the values and in the Kuen and outside of the Kuen, and having this fluidity, that makes you strong as a person.
That's why you learn the yin yang.
Right.
You have the hard and the soft. The love and the hate. You got. How am I going to understand what love is if I don't even know what hate is?
Right. 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 That's a good point. Are there any principles or techniques in One-Up Kendo that you believe are more relevant now than they were in the past, or that should be rediscovered?
Yeah, just being simple.
Okay.
Just being simple, because we have so many natural things to happen, and all these movements. What do you think is a block? The block is also a hit. The outdoor block is a strike. So combining the things. Why people are going to get? You learn everything, but once you learn everything, just keep it simple, really simple. You know what I mean? You might go and put 20 things on the buffet table, but you find you only like rice and fish. It's okay.
Okay, that's very good. Okay, I want to go into the future and your vision. Where do you see Wonokondo in 10 years, and maybe perhaps in 50 years? Well, we could start with 10 now.
Okay, the strongest component that we have here is in Europe, yeah, in Germany, yeah,
Yeah.
It's really strong, and the thing is, the only way it's going to continue is just that the first generation realize that you gotta let go and let the second generation take it forward, because the first generation are too comfortable right now, which is okay because they've already done a lot. Okay, but it's now time for the second generation, third generation to pick up. But the first generation got to be there. You got to help them. You know, I've written out a couple of books. One is called Leadership, and one is called Teamwork.
Yeah.
You know, and they should have this in it so they know how to work as a team. And the only way that you can work as a team and to make things go is that you got to communicate, you got to listen, because technology is so advanced.
Yes.
that the young ones know more about the cell phone than I do. So you ask them how can we make it better? You might not like it, but that's the world. If you stay backwards, then you're gonna die backwards. You got to be able to motivate. And why Juan Hapyondo has always been at the head was because I could see the future. I was always thinking, this is what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. We're going to change. We have to do this. We got to do this. And slowly by slowly, we progress. You know, I always say that the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
Yeah.
So that means slowly.
Yeah.
Learn, progress. But everybody learns together.
Right.
Yeah. The first generation cannot keep what they have. They got to pass it on.
Yeah.
Here's the baton.
Yeah.
We're in what they call delay race, where you pass the baton on. Keep the baton going. Don't drop the baton. You know, some instructors feel they drop. I said, no. Why are you doing this? You have to keep the legacy going of your line.
And that's really important for the survival of the style, or for the sustainability, as we say right now, you know, and adjusting, like you were saying, you adjusted with your health conditions, you know, adjusting to your environment to make the best. I think this is part of Wonokondo. So adjusting also to all the challenges that we are facing, or the new, maybe not the challenge, but new development in technology, as you were saying, is also part of Wonokondo. So that makes Wonokondo a fluent and ever so evolving style, and not a fixed system. Is that correct?
Yeah, and this is why we go to the word ohana. It's to build up as a family.
Yeah.
You know, because I always tell you folks, anything big begins from something small. Two people, you know, they get together, they make children, they have more children, and it grows and grows and grows. You see, but if one person says no, I stop, then the family don't continue on.
Right.
You got to be able to continue the family.
Right.
The legacy.
The legacy. Right. Get it. Okay. Let me just check your questions real quick. When you look, we're almost done. So, when you look back on your life's work, what fills you with greatest pride?
My life work.
Your life is.
Oh, my life in general.
We envision we know you with Wonokondo. So maybe you can expand on this, or.
Well, first of all, you know, the most important thing for me is my family.
Yes.
You know, my blood family. Yeah. And then my external family is the one Hapyondo. Yeah. Because if you don't have the support of your family, your blood family, it's hard to you to go out into the external with the rest of the family.
Right.
But we all have to have communication. That's what I always say. You know, sometimes I get upset with some people within the organization. It's just that the reason why it's not working is you're not communicating, and you're not giving them a chance to hear you. You have to hear them. Everything. Not only look at the face. You got to be able to feel the inside, the feeling. Because sometimes a person can talk to you only to talk, but you don't feel. But when you feel, the inside, you say, oh, I get it. I get it. And when you have that compassion, the communication and trust, then you build an organization. And we have a lot of work still yet. Because in the world we have right now, you got so many fake news that coming on the Twitter and on news that sometimes even when you talk to a person, you don't know if you're talking to the real person or you're talking to AI.
Right.
You know? So
I'm real.
Huh?
I'm real.
Yeah, right. You see. So
but so what are you, I mean, if you had a magic wand and you could have whatever you want with KAJUKENBO, what would it be? Is it like maybe international expansion, or what would it be?
to this organization here?
Yeah, or
Okay, say
KAJUKENBO
that
in general.
say this organization is just one, yeah, here in Germany.
Mhm.
I'd like to have 1,000 organizations like this all over. You see, all strong as a family, because family that fights together sticks together.
That's true. That's true. That's very, very true. Well, I think we are coming to an end of our. That's a good ending word. Thank you very much, Grandmaster Dacascos, for this inspiring conversation, and your passion and wisdom are a gift to the entire martial arts community, not just in Germany but everywhere in the world. And we all hope to see it grow, not just in Germany but internationally as well.
You say two things that stick into my mind. You said passion and hope.
Yeah.
And passion you must have. Hope is hope. You hope you can learn, and I hope I can teach.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so far, I think that is fulfilled, because we are very grateful to have you, and that you touched so many lives, not just here in Germany, but everywhere, because we also work together in, I mean, you taught me in Portland, Hawaii, you were everywhere, and people just learn even from your videos, on that you have out there. I mean, so it's fantastic. And
I'm writing books right now. I've got one called the Heart series. And it's teaching about leadership, respect, compassion, and how it fits into the martial arts. And I'm doing this for the children first.
Nice.
Because the children are the one that need it.
Right.
And I use Japan as an example.
Okay.
Because the kids in Japan come up with a lot of discipline and a lot of caring for the elders and respect. And this is why you don't have that much crime in Japan. I mean, everything is so perfect. And that's a real good of Bushido in martial arts. Not like, MMA today. I mean, it's okay, but it comes up with a different mentality. They go out and punch you in the face. Punch. No. I mean, go kiss. Hug. It's much better. No fighting.
Right. Well, thank you so much. That brings us to the end of this interview, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So.